How can a man walk away from a child that he has been raising for 3, 5, 10, 15 years simply because the DNA test shows that he's not the biological father?
The same way a woman can deceive her child for 3, 5, 10, 15 years by allowing them to believe that the wrong man is their biological father, simply because she couldn't be honest or faithful. What's good? I'm DonTheConMan. Welcome to the channel. We break down the drama, react to the mess, and call out the culture. If you vibe with that, hit the like button. Want to stay locked in, subscribe and tap the bell. No face, no fluff, just real talk. Let's get into it. We've got a good one here today, fellas. So there's this woman on TikTok asking the question, how can a man walk out of a child's life after 3, 5, 10, 15 years just because he finds out he's not the biological father? We're going to let our full 4-minute video play out, but I'll be pausing to give my 2 cents. Let's continue.
How can a man walk away from a child that he has been raising for 3, 5, 10, 15 years simply because the DNA test shows that he's not the biological father? Hear me out here. I'm not being insensitive. I know that his world has just been turned upside down. I know he feels betrayed. He's devastated. I empathize. I sympathize with his predicament. However, how is one able to walk away from a child that one has bonded with, loved, nurtured, poured blood and sweat into, simply because the DNA test shows that you're not the biological father?
And my answer is simple. The same way a woman can deceive her child for 3, 5, 10, 15 years by allowing them to believe that the wrong man is their biological father simply because she couldn't be honest or faithful. The same way she can lie to her husband or partner for decades, making him believe that she gave him the greatest gift a woman can give a man, his child, when in reality, she gave that gift to Pookie down the street and gave her husband the honor of raising and paying for Pookie's kid. The same way a woman who knows full well that another man may be the father robs that actual father of the chance to bond with his child from day one. He misses birthdays, first steps, first words, all stolen because the mother wanted to keep another man in the dark. Now she claims she empathizes with men in this situation, but let's keep it 100. She can't. She is not a man. She will never be in that position. Any children she births, she knows are hers. Her identity as a mother is locked in the moment she gives birth. But for a man, all he has is trust. He trusts that his woman is faithful. He trusts that those are his kids. If he finds out years later that the kids aren't his entire identity as a father gets shattered. It's not the same as being a stepdad or adopting, where you walk in knowing the truth. This man believed those kids were his blood. And biology does matter. It's why people spend tens of thousands on fertility treatments before they consider adopting or fostering kids. It's why same-sex couples often want at least one parent's DNA involved. It's why people take ancestry tests to learn about their ethnic background. Biology matters, even if it's inconvenient to admit. For the mother, it's easy to minimize a man's pain because she will never experience that specific betrayal.
I understand getting rid of the wife or the girlfriend. The word I actually want to use starts with a W and rhymes with sure. Get rid of the W. But the children or the child, the innocent child, it is flummoxing to me. Now, I'm not a man and I do not know how this impacts men. I also know that there's deep shame. But were I in that predicament, of course I would be devastated. I'd be hurt and betrayed. But then I'd let the children know or the child know. You may not be my biological child, but you're still my child. I love you. You're my child in my heart. I've bonded with you. I've raised you. So nothing changes.
You're weaponizing the bond this man has built with the child. You're using guilt to force him to continue raising and paying for kids that aren't his, kids you tricked him into thinking were his. Now, let's really talk about the emotional manipulation, because this is the part people love to gloss over. You didn't just lie. You built an entire emotional universe around that lie. You let that man believe that child was his on purpose. You let him fall in love with fatherhood, with the idea of being a dad. You let him make memories, take on responsibilities, and carry the emotional weight all under false pretenses. And now that the truth is out, you're weaponizing the very bond you created through deception. That's not love. That's not loyalty. That's manipulation. You're not pleading with him from a place of honesty. You're guilting him from a place of self-preservation. You're not protecting the child. You're protecting your lie. You're using that child's smile, that child's trust, that child's innocence as emotional blackmail. You're saying, if you leave, look what you'll do to this child. Look how much it will hurt them. When the truth is, you are the one who set that pain in motion, not him. You did that, and now you expect that man to suffer in silence, to keep playing father so you don't have to face the fallout of your betrayal. You want that man to shut up and provide. You want him to stay, not because it's right, but because it's easier for you. This is psychological warfare disguised as what's best for the child. It's guilt-wrapped coercion masked as love. It's control. And the cruelest part, the child becomes the collateral damage of your deception. They're growing up in a house of mirrors, not knowing who they are, where they come from, or who to trust. You robbed them of truth. You robbed him of consent. And now you're calling it love? Hell no. And that's not love, that's manipulation on a master level.
Now, I know a lot of men worry about, oh, then I have to continue paying I have to pay child support now that we're not together. So what? I'd pay the child support. Because you know what? Even though everything has changed, nothing should have changed, because it's still the child that I raised, bonded with, and loved. And in an attempt not to pay child support, one ends up cutting off one's nose to spite one's face. Because you got to look at the big picture, the relationship with that child, the continued relationship, and the ability to go ahead and raise and nurture that child, because you already have that bonded relationship.
Now she brings up child support. She says she would continue paying child support to maintain the relationship with the child. What am I hearing right now? Do women really believe that a man who was lied to, cheated on, and manipulated should financially support kids that aren't his? That level of delusion is not my specialty, since I'm not a licensed psychologist, but it sounds a lot like emotional manipulation. You're weaponizing the bond this man has built with the child. You're using guilt to force him to continue raising and paying for kids that aren't his. Kids you tricked him into thinking were his. When this man finally reaches his breaking point, when the cheating, the lying, and the betrayal become too much, and he chooses to walk away, suddenly he's the villain? Suddenly he's abandoning a child that was never his to begin with? Hell no. That man and the child are both victims of the mother's lies. The mother is the only person who knew that another man could be the father. And now that the truth is exposed, she wants to transfer the child's pain onto the man she deceived, as if he created this mess. A man is not responsible for kids who aren't his. A woman does not have the right to assign paternity by deception. You don't get to have another man's child and then choose who gets to pay for it. That's not how this works.
But once again, because I'm not a man, I do not understand how anybody can walk away from a child. Story time. My husband had a boss about 20 years ago. This gentleman's son had some medical issues. And to make a long story short, he found out that his 19-year-old son was not his biological child. Needless to say, he was devastated. But you know what? He had raised this child for 19 years, was paying for college. This was his son, and he was not going to let him go. And my heart broke for him, but I was so proud of this man because he did not walk away from his child.
She tells a heartwarming story about a man who found out that his 19-year-old son wasn't biologically his, and yet he still chose to remain a father figure. And honestly, that's nice, that's admirable. But let's be real for a second. Did he really have a choice? She didn't mention his age, but let's do the math. If the average first-time dad is around 30 years old and the alleged son is now 19, that would put this man somewhere around his late 40s or early 50s. At that stage in life, starting over and having a biological family of your own, that window is closing fast, not biologically, but socially, practically, energetically. You're not dating the same women. You're not living the same life. You're not running on the same timeline as a man in his 20s or 30s. So did this man freely choose to stay, or was he just accepting the only option left after his prime years of fatherhood were taken from him by a lie? That's not a choice. That's resignation. Do we remember the viral TikTok from that 70-year-old judge who found out neither of his kids were his? This man, a judge, a father, a provider, used humor to tell his story. But underneath the jokes, you could see the pain in his eyes. That man was crushed because he wasn't just betrayed. He was robbed. He didn't get the truth. He didn't get the chance to start over. He didn't get the opportunity to have children of his own. That's what happens when the lie goes on for decades. That's what happens when paternity is assigned by convenience and not confirmed by mandatory testing at birth. Time runs out.
And I think at times some men might think walking away from the child is a way to punish the woman for her betrayal. But at the end of the day, the person you're hurting is the child. And I can't help but wonder, won't you be traumatized as a person walking away from someone that you've bonded with, that you've loved? For the man, isn't that traumatic? I mean, I really do not understand. I just cannot relate. And once again, I'm not a man. I'm sensitive to the hurt, to the pain, to the betrayal. But is it right to walk away from a child you've bonded with simply because the DNA test shows that you're not the biological father? Food for thought. Talk to you later.
And here's what really blows my mind. If the mother really cared about her child having a father in their life, she wouldn't double down on the lie. She'd pick up the phone. She'd call the biological father. She'd do whatever it takes to give that child a connection to their bloodline, their roots, their truth. But no, instead of doing that, she chooses deception. She handpicks a man to play dad. She manufactures a fantasy. And when the truth finally comes out, she doesn't go looking for the real father. She tries to guilt the wrong man into staying. Why? Because deep down, this was never about what's best for the child. It was about what's easiest for her. Let's ask the real question. Why does she get to decide that the biological father should be cut off? Why does she get to erase a man's right to know his own child? What gives her the moral authority to say, I know there's a chance another man is the father, but I'd rather pretend this child belongs to someone else? That's not motherhood, that's selfishness. That's making unilateral decisions about someone else's DNA, someone else's legacy, without their consent. Let me be clear. The biological father has a right to know his child exists. He has a right to decide whether or not he wants to be involved. That choice should never be taken from him. But in this situation, he doesn't even get that choice because she made it for him. She decided he was irrelevant. She decided the child didn't need him, and she decided another man would be easier to control. And now when her web of lies starts to unravel, she wants to cry about how the man she deceived is walking out. No, the only person who walked out was her. She walked away from truth. She walked away from accountability. She walked away from her child's right to know where they came from and who they came from. This whole thing reeks of selfishness. It's not about the child. It's not about love. It's about control. It's about shame. It's about protecting a lie, no matter how many lives it ruins. I say all of this when I know that a lot of women really don't give a damn about how this situation affects the men. So let's talk about the impact on the child, because one day that child becomes an adult, and one day they find out the truth, and that's when the real pain hits. Biology matters, not because it makes someone more loving, but because it builds the foundation of identity. It tells you where you come from, your ancestry, your medical history, your genetic risks, your truth. Imagine growing up thinking you're Italian. You learn the language, you celebrate the culture, you visit the motherland, and then one day you find out that you don't have a drop of Italian blood in you. That part of your identity, built on a lie. Now multiply that lie across every aspect of your life, like your name, your medical records, your understanding of who you are. What happens to that child's sense of self, their family tree, their health history, their entire worldview? Gone, because one person, the mother, made a selfish decision. And don't get it twisted, sticking the wrong man in that father role does not undo the damage. It doesn't magically give that child the right genetics. It doesn't reconnect them to their lost family. It doesn't fix the identity crisis that's coming when the truth eventually surfaces. Here's the reality. Not knowing who your real father is comes with serious consequences. No accurate medical history, since you're blind to hereditary conditions like cancer, heart disease, mental illness. You might lose out on inheritance, military benefits, or even citizenship in some cases. You'll never know your half-siblings, uncles, or grandparents, the people you had a right to know. You might falsely identify with an ethnicity or culture you don't belong to, while never discovering the one that's actually yours. The choice to know who you are was stolen from you by someone who should have protected your truth. Even risk of accidental incest, since you could potentially date half-siblings and not even know it. This isn't just about feelings, it's about facts. Biological truth matters to the man, to the child, and to the legacy that follows both of them. I know most people don't care how men feel in situations like this, but I do, and somebody has to say it. If you made it this far, drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree? Disagree? Let's talk about it. If you respect real talk and accountability, hit that like button. And if you want more content that says the quiet part out loud, subscribe and tap the bell. No face, no fluff, just real talk. DonTheConMan out.